in 3, 2, 1, boom. Okay. Hey out there, everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of Large Format Live. Let me know how the audio sounds this time around. I think I got that part squared away. I just want to make sure, and I don't think I have the chat window thing configured right. It was kind of interfering with some other stuff, so for now we're not going to do any chat bubbles, but let me know how everything sounds, and yeah, sound off in the comments in the chat. And let's see where everybody's from and who all's here today. Take a look down in the chat, make sure I can see everybody. Okay. How are we looking? Cool. All right. So now we're starting to see some folks. Fantastic. All right. Thanks everybody for showing up. Let's see who we got here. Okay. We got Max in the chat. Hey, how's it going there? Cool. All right. I see Laura in the chat. She's got the admin status going. All right. We have Austin. Hey, how's it going? All right. We got Eric. We got Mark. All right. Excellent. We're starting to see a lot of folks roll in. Perfect. 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 Okay. And yeah, everything looks good here. So today's setup is pretty loose. I'm not doing any printing or anything. I barely got the darkroom cleaned enough to do the stream as it is. But I'll show you what we've got at least. We do have a second cam. So if anybody has any tech or camera related questions, I am here for those today. I'm just going to switch over to this guy. And what we've got is a feed of the Tachihara. So hopefully, is that showing up? I think so, yeah. This is the 8x10 Tachihara. You've probably seen this if you follow the channel. If you're new here, this is Large Format Live, a kind of an extension of what we do for Large Format Friday. Sometimes I don't make Fridays, and sometimes in addition, I make these live feeds. So if you have any questions regarding these crazy bellows type cameras, that's what we're here for today. Okay, let's see, head back to the chat, see what we got here. Okay, hey, we got Sean in the chat. We have Michael, fantastic, coming in from Texas. Fena's here. John's here. JP, got Max. Oh, Max, I always forget you're in Sweden. It's so cool being able to connect with so many folks worldwide with all things film photography. Oh, this is so great. All right, so, you know, what's the topic today? I don't really have a huge thing in mind, but if you have any burning large format questions, I want to get you those answers in a space where we can interact and people can chime in the chat. A little more reactive than like comments where we're always answering each other like hours and hours apart. But because I see them here in the chat, I want to show folks a really cool thing that came into the LFF inbox, well, mailbox. So Large Format Friday, the series that kind of started this all, has a P.O. box for folks that want to donate stuff into the show, or if you want to send if you're a camera manufacturer and you want to send something in, I've got that. That's P.O. Box 44684, Columbus, Ohio 43204. But anyway, I got this big old thing in the mail the other day, and there's some really cool stuff in it, and it's from somebody who's in the chat. All right, so let's see if I can get it out. It's beautifully packaged. Nice flat lay flats here. All right. Hey, we got Charlie from Ontario. Fantastic. Yeah, we're just chilling today. All right, let's see. Can I find the space where the print is? Oh, goodness. I think I have it tucked. I have it tucked. Ah, it's the second one. Great. All right. Oh yeah, go ahead and start throwing questions down in the chat if anybody has any about large format photography while I get this this print out to show folks. All right, let's see. How's everybody doing? All right, I see Carrie there in the chat. John, JP, did I miss anybody? I don't think I missed anybody. Perfect. All right. Well, we have 40 folks watching worldwide. Pretty awesome. All right. I feel bad that I'm not like doing any like hardcore printing or anything today, but I had to reorder some chemicals, so I haven't even mixed my stuff from dry components yet. Yeah, I'm one of those hardcore darkroom folks that does that. It's really a cost-saving thing, but it does a pretty good job. All right, there we go. Show everybody this print. So this is a black and white print from Sean Moore. So Sean, thank you for sending that in. It arrived in great shape. The lay flat was a great choice, and this is printed on this beautiful Hahnemuhle black and white stock. Whenever I do an inkjet print that you see on like Marrash.com /prints, I print all of my inkjets on Hahnemuhle. I think it is one of the better stocks for black and white fine art, and this is just a really cool beach scene. We have all this driftwood, almost looks like a cabin coming up here, and yeah, just really, really, really nice. And I always appreciate a handmade print, whether it was coming out of an inkjet or made in the darkroom. You had a hand in it. It's a physical thing. All right, cool. All right, now I'm seeing the questions rolling. All right, let's hit the chat, see what's going on. All right. Bald pipe smoker. All right, we got Brady. All right, Brady had a question for Lore. Nice, nice. Okay. Let's see. Dillinger, great. Oh, fantastic! Glad to hear that the prints from the print sale arrived. That was so much fun being able to spend extra time up here making prints for folks that tuned into the last live stream on my birthday where I did the birthday print sale. So nothing too hardcore like that going on today, but you know, just a nice chill, relaxed Sunday. All right, we got Disco Shrew in the chat. Fantastic. Max, let me drop the actual address down in the chat. So it's P.O. Box 44684. And that's Columbus, Ohio, 43204. And that's USA. Sweet. All right. Oh, Sean, that's a good point. Yes, I did. I found the hidden. Attached with the note on the opposite side, there was a hidden Cinar board. I love clever packaging like this. I was like, why is this piece of cardboard feel heavier? Haha. Lo and behold, a number 0 Cinar board appeared. Very, very, very cool. All right. Critters to Cosmos. Hey, how's it going? All right. Aquatic Adventures? As in like the awesome like aquarium store in Columbus, Ohio? Is that the same one? All right. So Carrie asks, first question up for the day. Carrie asks, do you have the Hasselblad sheet film back? I have several, along with one adapter for glass plates. I don't personally have that Hasselblad film back. So Hasselblad made lots and lots of adapters, not adapters, but different ways to transport film through their cameras. They were one of the first modular medium format system cameras starting in the 50s. And they had backs for 120 roll film, 6x6, 645. I don't think they made 6x7. Little 4x4 squares for 127 type film. And they also had 70mm roll film cassettes for like the Hasselblad for going out into space. And they also had adapters for putting individual cut sheets. I'm not sure if it took plates or not, but that's another thing that they had for the Hasselblad. So I don't have that one, but I have seen one come in. It came into Midwest Photo like in 2015 or something. It was pretty wild. Another way to make the Hasselblad experience a little less convenient and a little more like large format. Very, very cool. All right, am I missing anybody? Okay, not yet. So, Brian, thank you for showing up, man. Time for the monthly dose of I don't know anything about. No, you know, I think everybody like. Not everybody, but photography occupies kind of this really broad spectrum, and there's like the pure artists on one end where there are certain photographers I know where they can't even remember what darn camera they use, let alone any of the tech settings, but the art side of things, the aesthetics, come to them just like amazingly easy. So whichever end of that photographic spectrum you find yourself, the super techie side of it or the fine art side of it, it's a good thing to find folks that occupy opposite sides of the spectrum and get with them and, you know, ask for feedback and anything you can do to, you know, get inside their head to help with that other side. Because if you stay on one end of that photographic spectrum too long, or that art spectrum, you're not going to develop any further as an artist or, you know, technical, whatever you're needing. So yeah, that's another reason I do this kind of stuff. Fill in the blanks for folks. All right, anyway, so I have a question from Eric in the chat. I've been challenged with my 4x5 success. I have tried out Harman Direct Positive without success. Does reciprocity failure apply with this paper, or is it just film? So Ilford DPP or Harman Direct Positive paper is a very, very contrasty orthochromatic paper stock. It has a relatively low ISO, and in general, this isn't for every single ortho paper or ortho film like X-ray film, but a lot of those materials photographically are going to have less noticeable reciprocity failure characteristics because they are meant to be used with these incredibly long exposures. So they don't suffer from it the same way that we'll see with more traditional based films. And that's due to their lower overall sensitivity. You normally have to give it more and more and more exposure. For the Harman Direct Positive, I don't shoot a lot of it, but my darkroom roommate, Stephen Takis, who has used this space for even years before I have, noted that his exposures that went longer than, say, 30 seconds did need a little bit of an adjustment, something like a half stop. But there is the Harman data sheet, which will have those characteristics just like they do for film. Cool. All right. So Aquatic Adventures has, recently purchased 8x20 and planning on cutting X-ray film to fit or paper negs to keep things effective. Any tips on the best way to cut? So I know some folks that will just kind of cut it on any sort of surface. So this is cutting down film and paper materials. Now, my opinion on this comes from the fact that my mother is a quilter and I have done some quilting and stuff before. You never want to cut multiple materials with the same thing unless it's a very cheap utility knife. So if you have a specialty device for trimming down paper and film, I recommend using distinctly different blades to do it. I prefer the rotary style cutters, the Rotatrims. They're kind of expensive. You can still get them new in the US and Europe, but get a used one. Like for everybody that's getting into this, there's probably 10 that just have one lying around, but Rotatrims are awesome for that. If you use one for film, try to get a replacement blade to use one for paper. If you cut enough of those back and forth, you're going to dull that blade. So trimming down that really helps. And then once you have that, so the Rotatrim it's a rotary cutter. It has a bed and you just slide the blade across. Those are excellent. You want to make sure you have enough width, but then on top of that, you're going to want to create like a gap or a barrier. Some folks will create a full wooden jig. So something that is like a stopper for the measurement of the film. You slide the film in, and this is of course in complete darkness, and then you make your cut once that's all done. So that's how I found the best way to cut paper and films. I've not cut too much X-ray film because X-ray film tends to have a thicker base to it. Even though there's less layers, there's a thicker base. And another thing with X-ray film, if you get a double-sided X-ray film, like most of them that are out there, you can get scratch city. So you're going to want to have some sort of softer substrate to lay that film on and handle it with gloves so you don't get a lot of damaging going on. Very, very cool. All right. Oh, hey, Philip. Nice to see you in the chat there. Okay. Oh, Chris. Hey, how's it going, man? All right. Let's see. Oh, did I not see Austin's question? Oh, I didn't. So, Laura, thanks for highlighting that for me. I'm near Columbus. I'm just started 4x5 and developed my first images. Any hidden gems for landscapes? So, I would recommend, well, in the direct Columbus area, there's a few nice places. There's a couple of waterfalls. Most of them are up near the Dublin area, so the west side of Columbus. But if you want some hidden gems that are less than an hour from the Columbus, Ohio area, I recommend going to the ODNR's DNAP website. So that's DNAP, Department of Natural Areas and Preserves. There's going to be lots of good stuff over there if you check that out. So a lot of those, there's a lot of preserves that about half of them don't need a permit to go, but there's very little parking. And then the permit only stuff, you usually got to file that a couple weeks before you go. You put a little printed out, a laser jet note, put that in your window, and you're good to go. Nobody's going to bother you. Cool. All right, let's see. How else are we doing here? All right, Tyler. Hey, thanks for stopping by today. All right. Oh, all right. A perfect chance to head over to the camera. So Austin has another question, just starting with 4x5. At what point do I need to start worrying about bellows extension factor when shooting? I bought a Graflex speed graphic and stumped as to when it needs to come into account. Well, I'm going to talk about it using the big camera first, but then I'm going to grab out something that was sent into the show. So let me switch to the camera. I'm going to get this fabulous print out of the way so nothing gets damaged. Great. Okay. So over here on the Tachihara. There we go. I have on there right now my standard lens, which is a 355 millimeter. If you're working in 4x5, that's going to be like a 135 or a 150 millimeter lens. When you're focusing the lens at infinity, bellows extension factor is not a thing. It's only once you start significantly pushing the bellows out further than its infinity focal length. Now, a lot of optics for 35 millimeter and medium format don't have to worry about this because those are accounted for in a lot of these digital metering units. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to rotate this to fit it back in the frame. Now, once I have my bellows drawn out further to focus way, way, way closer, that's when I'm going to have to worry about my bellows extension factor. Now, I have like an ancient video on my YouTube channel about this that I shot with like one of the original Android smartphones, but I have a recent edition from season 1 of LFF. But as a rule of thumb, for every 50% of the bellows beyond its infinity focal length, you're gonna have to add 1 f-stop. So in this case, a 355 millimeter lens, that's like 14 inches. If I've got about 7 inches of bellows, that's gonna be 1 f-stop of bellows extension factor. So basically, anytime you're gonna be focusing super duper close, that's when you're gonna have to worry about this. Sorry about the squeak. Oh no, this thing needs more WD-40. Okay, gonna bring that back in. And I'm gonna switch up the camera and talk using this fantastic thing that was sent into the show from Jonathan. And I mentioned this on one of the recent LFFs. This has a 135 Xenar. Oop, I'm gonna put up the infinity stops on this. That's these little guys on the bed here. And that's calibrated to this lens. So right now, this is configured for its 135 millimeter lens. If I draw the bellows out just a little bit to focus like 10 feet away, nothing's gonna happen. But it's only once I start focusing way, way, way closer. So if you have the bellows really, really far drawn out on your camera, beyond what the infinity focus is, that's when you have to start worrying. I usually tell folks once your focus is 3 meters or closer, you're really going to have to start worrying about it. But it also depends on what focal length lens you're using. If you're using a really, really wide angle lens, like a 65, 75, or 90 millimeter lens, you're going to hit that bellows extension factor faster because just those tiny little pushes of the lens are going to cause that bellows extension. And that's kind of the most like tricky thing. Anytime I'm using a wide angle or super wide angle lens on a large format camera, I just add like half a stop by default. And if I'm focusing really close, I'm probably gonna add an extra stop on top of that for 2 reasons. Wide angle lenses tend to have pretty significant vignetting on them unless they're super, super big and hourglass shaped. And you are probably not accounting for bellows extension factor. Now, there are things that you can do, like carry a tape measure with you. The previous owner of this camera actually had a ruler taped to the bed. I don't know if that's really hard to see right there, but they have this little inches measurement that's typed in right there. So that can help with that whole bellows factor deal. But thanks for that question. This is the whole reason I'm doing this stream, is to help folks kind of get there even a little bit faster. All right, let's see how things are looking. All right. Oh, we have a question from, is that Luis or Lewis? Which setup do you recommend as a starter? Aha, this is the question I probably get. I get about 2 emails, no, not a week. It's probably like more like 3 about now. But what do you start with? I always recommend starting in 4x5. And I know that's like, of course the 8x10 guy says start 4x5, but seriously, you have more lenses, more cameras, way more films available, and everything is generally going to be less back-breaking, both for your tripod and for your literal back. So I always recommend starting with a 4x5, and then just find a camera that is going to accomplish some of the things that you're looking to do. If you only really care about doing 4x5 a little bit, and you don't plan on doing too much of those crazy tilt-shift movements, a Graflex is still a great camera to start with. I haven't given this type of camera too much of a fair shake myself because I had access and I immediately jumped into a field type camera like the Tachihara. In fact, I'm just gonna jump over to the Tachihara. I jumped into one of these very, very quickly, and I like it because I do landscape and it can fold up pretty well. The other reason I like a field type camera like this one is it has slightly more of those camera movements, the ability to, so this is rise, and fall. I can also tilt from the base. Tilting is when I shift forward or backward from beyond the plane that it can do, right there. I can also swing with this one, so it's got quite a bit more functionality, but more knobs is usually more weight and more problems. You have to remember that all of those knobs have been loosened. So it all depends on what kind of frequency of shooting that you plan on doing in your large format setup. If you plan on just doing stuff in the studio and you want to keep your expenses as low as physically possible, you can get into a monorail camera, which is a big studio heavy camera, not typically great for backpacking. You can, but it's a workout. That's another great way to get going. I have a very, very early video, I think it's video 3 in season 1, or so LFF episode 3, where we talk about the different types of cameras that are available. I recommend checking that out if you already haven't. Oh, by the way, I have to check in and say, oh my goodness, we've got 72 people watching. So thank you all for stopping by and checking out Large Format Live. We're playing it pretty loose today, just a little bit of Q&A. So I've got myself, got the camera back here, and yeah, thanks for stopping by. Let's see, let's check in with the chat and see how everybody's doing. All right. Hey, we've got Melanin X Halide. Happy Sunday from Cincinnati. Would love to see you shoot some more LF portraits in the coming months. I would like to see me shoot a lot more portraits too. I do have some good news for folks that enjoyed any of the episodes where I'm hanging out with my buddy Tariq. I have a couple more episodes planned. Hopefully they're going to be within season 4, if not early season 5. So we have more Tariq content coming. I realize those are always the ones that go over the best, and we don't have to sugarcoat it. It's because Tariq's the best. He's like one of the better large format photographers for portraiture. So I'm going to hang out with him. We're going to shoot some more portraits, and we've got some other funky gear we're going to test out in the studio. So it should be a lot of fun. Stay tuned for that. All right. We've got Dillinger with a question. For a smaller original negative, would you recommend analog internegatives or digital negatives for alternative process? So alternative photographic process, for those of you that haven't tried it before, that is when we have something that prints usually using ultraviolet light, and it doesn't have to take place in a completely blackened space. In fact, I could do alternative process right here. I have on live streams in the past. I just didn't set anything up today. Alternative photographic processes are typically hand-coated onto a piece of paper and then exposed with ultraviolet light. And they'll look something like this. This was a whole plate alternative process print using the calotype printing process. And yeah, pretty cool. A lot of these can be done really inexpensive, but it's a contact printing process, meaning the original that you use has to be the same size as the print. What does this mean? Well, that means you need a bigger camera if you want to shoot and make bigger prints. Some ways we can work around this are by creating a digital negative where we scan in the original and then blow it up and print it out onto a piece of transparent or semi-transparent inkjet material. This is great and really inexpensive to do. There's a ton of good resources out there that are completely free for making digital negatives. I'll be honest, I haven't done too much of the new digital negative stuff because when I started, I got kind of disillusioned with it. This was around 2010, and the processes weren't that well refined. The information for it was behind a ton of paywalls and being very, very gatekept. Anymore, there's a lot of good information that's out there for free, even on YouTube, and I would recommend going with the digital negative process because creating them is as easy as taking a curve, importing it into Photoshop, so Photoshop curves. You could do this in Lightroom, but it's way, way, way more control in a full destructive editing suite like Photoshop, and you can apply that curve as like a preset, so you import the image, make your tweaks, apply the adjustment curve, and then it gives you a digital negative. There are multiple different manufacturers who make the inkjet materials that this gets printed onto, and they're great. I think the all-star that everybody still uses is Pictorico OHP, but there's also ones that are made by ProMaster and Inkpress, which I think those are the exact same one anyway. Those are a more transparent material, but the Pictorico OHP Premium, that's the really, really good stuff. All right, so let's see. Who else do we got here? Oh my goodness, my mom's on the live stream. Hi, Mom. All right. We got Corey. Wow, we got some Got some Cincinnati representation. Jeez, all right, we need more Columbus people to be representing in here. All right, let's see. Hi from Cincinnati. Have you had any experiences with the Lomo graph lock? If so, tips for improving performance. I haven't yet. I have seen one of the pre-pro models for the Lomo graph lock. Have not had any experiences to try it out myself yet. Kind of excited to try one out though, because anytime you can get folks working faster in large format, you're going to get, you know, better results a little bit faster. I love the fact that you can use an 800 speed instant film. Is it perfect? Am I seeing a lot of shots come from folks that like look a little bit soft? Sure, and some of that is because we have to put this thicker adapter back into the camera. Anytime you start to shift, it's called that T distance, where the film plane sits flat, that's going to cause some issues. So for those who, well, I don't have a Lomo graph lock back here, but I do have this Graflex camera. So a lot of folks will also ask, hey, I want to shoot the Lomo graph lock back. What do I need? Well, you need a camera that has a graph lock back. The graph lock backs are really easy to determine because you're always going to see these large sliding clips in the back of your camera. And if I take these two metal bars here and I slide them like this whole ground glass and spring are going to come out of my camera. Once that's out, I can now start adding on these accessories, which then lock in. See that? If I slide this down, it locks any of those devices in. And the Lomo graph lock will just clip in. Only downside to that is to fit that whole instant film assembly that takes the Fujifilm Instax wide film, it's going to offset from where the film normally goes. So we can't trust our ground glass as it is. That's why the workflow for the Lomo graph lock starts by taking off your normal ground glass, putting on the adapter, which spaces that out, composing using that adapter, then taking that off, putting the other guy on, which has the film, and then taking your picture. The downside to that is, yeah, you're probably not going to be doing too much of this on the fly, unless you got kind of funky and started calibrating like rangefinders for that difference in focus, which I'm sure somebody's going to come up with one very, very soon, because there's a ton of folks that are really, really, really smart that are into large format. I think it's because they just can't leave well enough alone. They have to try other things. All right, so thanks for that question. I can't wait to get my hands on one. I've already reached out to Lomography. There's a ton of folks that want their hands on these things, and a lot of folks have pre-ordered it, so it's also my fault for not pre-ordering it. We're up to 75 in the chat, so thanks everybody for stopping by, Large Format Live. All right, let's see, how are we doing here? Oh yes, Laura, thanks for recommending the thumbs up and all of that good stuff. All right, let's see. Fantastic. Max, yes, as soon as I mentioned monorail cameras, I was like, I bet Max is going to chime in. So Cinar made a few different series of cameras, but one of their OG Cinar system cameras was the Norma, which surprisingly is also their lightest of their monorail beast cameras. I had slightly considered setting up the Cinar in here, but it would be a huge, huge mess to have a switched camera and then the big camera and then like this Cinar that I have to like haul out of the hallway. It would not work very, very well. All right, let's keep the let's keep the questions coming. All right. Oh, Sean's got the question. Next question. Could you explain the differences between front base tilt versus lens board or center tilt? So this is a question about those camera movements I was demoing. So we're going to head back to the first camera here, and we're going to take a look at some of the differences. So I'm going to turn my camera sideways like this, and focus looks decent. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay, so some large format cameras have multiple ways of applying that tilt. So when you have tilt that hinges at the base of the camera, that's called base tilt. So you can see the lens is tilting from this little axis right here. Now some large format cameras can tilt at the base, and other large format cameras, sometimes it's both, can also tilt from the center here. And it's really not the center, it's kind of this little hinge point. This is actually a feature that's built in so the camera can fold down onto itself, but I could apply, if I was willing, I could also apply some front tilt by doing this. Now, one of my first large format cameras didn't have this type of tilt, it only had base tilt. but from best I can tell, cameras that have tilts from the base, they seem to be a little bit easier going on how quickly they kill your image circle. So image circle is the circle of projected light that's coming from the lens onto the film plane. The upside to this is a little bit of tilt is going to go a long way, and you're not going to usually need too much, and it's not going to kill your focus. If I start tilting from this point right here, well, first and foremost, I've had a lot of fall that's also applied to the lens, so it's changing my position of that image circle. It's actually making everything look like it's lower down. But also, I'm going to run out of that image circle very, very quickly. So even very, very, very tiny movements here are the same as doing an extreme amount of base tilt. There are also some cameras out there that have what are called asymmetrical or yaw-free movements. Those ones, they don't move symmetrically, so it's not equal parts forward and backward. It makes it so when you apply that tilt, so you focus far, and then you swing or tilt to the near, you don't have to refocus. Some folks had asked on previous videos when I mentioned that am I doing other things? Anytime you apply movements, it's always a good check to recheck the focus when you're done applying those movements. And typically, you also want to change, once you start changing things like your working aperture. Is that aperture visible there? Yeah. Once I start moving around my aperture, it's also a good time to recheck the focus. When in doubt, check your focus. There might be something you haven't locked down or redone. It's always a good chance to make sure you're getting a good exposure there. All right. So how are we doing on the questions here? Oh, Jose, good. Oh, did I lose my focus? Why is it in standby mode? There we go. Hey, Jose, good seeing you, man. It's been forever. Yes, get a freaking tripod. That's been my mantra, my go-to for the longest time. You can thank my professor Jeff from college for beating that into my head. All right. Carrie, thanks for chiming in on the Lomo graph lock compatibility with chroma cameras. That was it's pretty cool that there's some manufacturers out there that are like so responsive in getting out products really quickly, but also supporting folks for all of these like new things that are coming out. They're not saying, you got to do it my way. They know what people want and they go for it. All right. Mikolaj, hey, how you doing over there in Poland? Very, very, very cool. Whoa, that is awesome of you doing all of that work for folks that are coming in. I know there's a bit of refugee action coming in from Ukraine there, and we appreciate you helping that out and stopping into the chat. All right, we got James from Fargo. Hey, very cool. James, there's also a really great large format photographer that also lives in Fargo. Really, really, really cool guy, and shoots some 8x10. So awesome. All right. Let's see. Have I ever tried Eastman 4127 commercial film? Oh, actually, yeah. I shared a link to some of that the other day on the Discord group, and I would recommend, if you're going to shoot that, treat it like really, really thick, good X-ray film. So that I looked up the data sheet for it. It is a very low ISO, blue sensitive only film. So it's like an ortho duplicating film. It looks great. All of those Eastman thick emulsion films are super, super thick. I've not tried that specific one, but I have recently used some old Tri-X pan that was on that same thicker base, and my goodness, it is like cardboard. It feels like 4 sheets of today's film, sandwiched together when you load it in the holders. It'll still fit, it's not gonna jam up or anything, but man, it's great for like hand processing. Like you just know you're not gonna mess it up or scratch it. It's kind of the opposite of X-ray film in that regard, but everything else about it, it's gonna feel like your half-speed blue X-ray film, or if you've shot the FPP blue X-ray film, it's gonna handle, well, it's gonna handle better than that, but it's gonna feel exposure-wise and look-wise, kind of like that. All right. Simon, hey, Team Skog coming in. Nice, nice. Let's see. Whoa. All right, now the chat's starting to get away from me. We're up to 80 folks. Hey, thanks everybody for stopping by Large Format Live. All right, what do we got? Why is, oh, that's why my focus is going kind of funky on me. All right, let's kind of keep it there and see how everything's going. Very cool. Tyler with the Lomo graph log, very cool. Kind of jealous. All right, what else are we doing? Eric, good question. If you have an earlier Graflex camera that predates the Graflock back, you may have to do some physical modification to the camera. Adding those on after the fact isn't impossible, but I think it's impossible to do without harming the camera. I don't know of anybody that does those mods, but you might want to check out graflex.org and see if there are any actual parts that they manufactured or if there's any services that would offer that. I don't know any off the top of my head. All right, Newburn Reynolds. All right, hey, how's it going down in Atlanta? All right, thank you so much for the kind words. Yeah, I try to be a service for folks that are getting into large format photography, so thank you so much. All right, let's see. We've got Austin. Does expired large format film hold up as well as 35? Aha, that is a fantastic question. So my opinion, large format film, or really any film, as it starts to scale up in size, this also works kind of like, or not kind of like, this works in tandem with the whole concept of depth of field. So the larger your original film size is, the less magnification it's going to need to achieve the same size print. So I'm going to bring this alternative process print back just as kind of an example. So this is a print that's 6.5 by 8.5, or also known as whole plate. This is a 1-to-1 contact print. There's no enlargement going on whatsoever. To make a similar size print to this from 35mm film, you need roughly, what's this? This is like an 8x enlargement from 35mm film. That means that we're going to notice any of those differences, those, if something's slightly out of focus or slightly grainy because it's expired, that's going to show up even quicker on 35mm. It's going to show up less apparent on medium format because you need less magnification. And then as you go up to large format, you're going to need little to no magnification compared to those smaller formats. Now, I'm not crapping on small formats. I still shoot with those. But time being the premium that it is, by the time I get out and shoot, I'm going to shoot with a large format camera. So large format cameras don't show expiration and all of the, the nasty stuff from overly expired film as quickly as you would with medium format or 35mm. And that also scales with the smaller films. So if you're working with something like spy film or 110 film, right? Like the really, really small stuff, it's not going to hold up near as well as even 35mm. So really you can shoot as much expired as you like. I know some folks that they're regularly shooting 30, 40-year-old expired films, and they're going to look great. I have an episode in the works. I'm still chipping away at it because I want to have a larger sample size, but I wanted to put together a whole LFF about working with expired film because a lot of the film I have is technically expired. It was frozen once it was bought, and I'm just kind of like working through the backstock as I go. So don't worry about expired film. It's going to be perfectly fine. The oldest sheet film that I've shot was back from the 70s, and it looks great. But I know some folks that regularly work with stuff dating even further back. So if you haven't yet, get subscribed to the channel, and yeah, look forward to that coming up in Season 4, Season 5 of LFF. Very cool. All right. Oh, James, yes, Chris Walker. That was that's who I was talking about. I wasn't trying to like do a call out post because I don't know how. He's kind of a private dude, but he's really, really cool. So, all right. Giacomo, my apologies. I am a bit of a fast talker. I will do my best to slow down a little bit and enunciate. I'll use my best diction when talking. So, all right. Oh man, we are getting so close to 100 folks. Thank you all so much for joining Large Format Live. We're here doing some Q&A up in my darkroom space here in Columbus, Ohio. It's cleaner than it was, but that's not saying much. I need to do some major cleaning before I start printing again. All right. Let's see. Soupser. Hello there. I've been binge watching all of your videos. I have a vintage Linhof Technica, but I'm thinking of selling to buy a modern field camera. Thoughts? Or should I just buy more lenses? this is a really, really good question. So you're into large format. You've got a camera that you're starting to get the reps with, so you're getting a little, like a little bit better with the setup, but maybe you're not sure, what should the next thing be? Should I get a new camera? My opinion, I would get more lenses first. I would kind of develop out everything I absolutely can with the camera before jumping into a new setup, because a new camera is going to introduce new problems in terms of like, hey, do I know how this works yet? Do I know where all the buttons and knobs are and moving things around? Anytime I'm about to make a major photographic decision, and you can even ask Lore, she'll probably chime in the chat. Anytime I'm about to make a huge financial decision, large format wise, I'll always ask myself, would I rather buy this camera or this really expensive thing, or would I rather buy film or other things that I know I'm going to use more regularly? And usually the answer is I'll buy some film and add to the already large film freezer. So consider that. I think Linhof Technica cameras are fantastic. They're just like better built Graflex cameras with, arguably a larger system, but really good options available in terms of being able to like drop the bed, do movements, and add lenses to it. So I would really, really recommend doing the lens route or the film route versus the camera. Oh, hey, Austin just chimed in with a super chat. Thank you so much, Austin. Thanks for all the helpful information. Always great to see communities. Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot. All right. Hey, we got Devin in the chat. Hey, Devin, how's it going, man? All right. We've got Nikolai. How's it going, Nikolai? Hey, we've got Nico. It's been a while, Nico. How's it going, man? I am finally playing with the Crown Graphic. So this came in over a month ago, but I'm gonna get out there and do a little bit more testing. I'm considering taking this one into the studio when I hang out with Tariq next, because I just really want to give this thing a fair shake. So in the past, I've kind of like poo-pooed the idea of the Crown Graphic sometimes, but they're great cameras. I still recommend them because they are still very inexpensive, super well made, but there is one giant downside to working with Graflex cameras, and that is parts. Parts are just not that available. There are folks that are starting to 3D print things for these cameras, but if you get a Graflex camera and you are a completionist, you want to have all the things completed, ask a lot of questions, and this really goes for any large format purchase. The most important things you're looking for in a large format camera purchase, you're going to want to make sure, that clicking noise is going to be huge. There we go. You're going to want to make sure the camera has a light tight bellows. You want to make sure these bellows are in really, really good shape. An easy way to look for light leaks is to take your camera into a darkened room and put a flashlight inside the bellows. It can be a smartphone flashlight, or it can be like, a stick LED light, and look for tiny little pinholes. Those pinholes will form on the bellows in the corners before anything else would happen. So just keep that in consideration. All right. So let's get some more comments here. All right. Devin, having a... Oh, you're out hiking with the large format cameras. Fantastic. Very, very, very cool. All right, let's see. Whoa, I am way behind on... Oh no, I'm getting way behind on these questions. All right, let's see how we go. Let's see. Chopper asks, on your wooden 8x10 camera, do you use alcohol-thinned wax to lubricate the wooden slides? I've never tried to use anything to lubricate the wooden slides. Most of the time the squeaking that's occurring is because, actually let me change over to the next camera. The only time that I've gotten squeaking on the camera was because over time this camera is it's gonna adapt to the environment it's in. It's gonna pick up moisture, so it's gonna fluctuate between a higher moisture environment and a lower moisture environment, and that's gonna cause the wood on the base as well as the wood in this center part to swell a little bit from where this rack connects to the pinion. So we have the rack and the pinion, which drives our focus, and that squeaking is coming from the shape of this kind of bowing out. So usually all I'll do is on the gears, I'll add a tiny bit of spray silicone lubricant, just a very teeny amount, and then I will also tighten the screws that are along here. And eventually some will pop out more than others. If you over tighten, you're going to get more squeaking. If you under tighten, then it's loose and it's going to shake, and we don't want that to happen. So great question. All right, how's our, okay, good. We're looking good there. Focus is coming in. All right, how are we doing? Oh, hey, we've got Philip Yu. Why not use axis tilt on the Tachihara by centering the rise fall of the lens? So that's a really good question. The tilt on this older camera on the axis will not allow me to center the lens because it only hinges from the very, very top of the camera. It's a teeny tiny thing that are slightly different between the smaller Tachiharas and the larger ones. All right, Reiner says, Acros on LF is gone. For night photography, do I get blown highlights? So Reiner, you bring up a really good point. Fujifilm Acros in 4x5 is hard to come by if you find some new old stock or expired film. So the reciprocity failure or Schwarzschild effect on there can be prevented a little bit with another modern T-grained film. Some folks will recommend going with Ilford Delta 100, but that one has some pretty nasty reciprocity failure. I would recommend going with Kodak T-Max 100. It's still not as great as Acros, but it comes very, very close. I recently helped convert my buddy Tariq Terry. You may have seen him here on the channel before in his studio. He does a lot of black and white work, and he is a huge, huge fan of Acros, but he also kind of saw the, the writing on the wall about Acros being, kind of going out of style in the larger sheet film sizes. So T-Max 100 is what I recommended for him, and it's the one that I would say is great for a lot of versatility and long exposure shooting. One thing that I think folks don't account for in these larger format sizes is just how prevalent reciprocity failure is. So that's as you give the film less and less and less light, so very short exposures in the thousandths of a second, or very, very long exposures because you're using something like a high F number or it's very low light, that will cause you to need to add more exposure because we're at different areas of that sensitivity curve that's going on. Or I guess I should do it this way, the S kind of curve. So to overcome that, we need to add extra exposure. Some films will suffer this reciprocity failure faster than others, and you can have a 400 speed film that actually doesn't do as good as a 100 speed film depending on how the reciprocity failure is. My example that I always use is Ilford HP5. T-Max 100 at a, like a 30-second exposure becomes a shorter exposure than HP5 at the same thing because of how much compensation you'll need to do for that reciprocity effect. All right, how are we doing here? Oh, Laura, thank you so much for dropping that stuff in the chat. Always appreciated. Hey, RJM, good seeing you. So, this is interesting username, 444-92611. I feel like that's a secret code, like a Konami code or something. Are there any cool specific effects that you have done with large format lenses that you can't do with other lenses? Well, it's not that you couldn't do it in other formats, but large format seems to effortlessly nail shallow depth of field, and specifically controlling depth of field within the limitations, within using camera movements. So large format is typically going to require longer focal length lenses, and if we know anything about depth of field is controlled 3 different ways. How close we are to our subject, how high our focal length number is, and how low our F number are. So if we are using, let's say, a standard lens for 4x5, which is a 150 millimeter lens, a 150 millimeter lens is naturally going to have a shallower depth of field than a 50 millimeter lens, which would be super crazy wide on 4x5 if it covered. So large format is typically going to have like super, super shallow depth of field at what we're used to being like normal close focusing distances. So for example, I'm filming this right now with a 2.8 lens, but I can still have like a good sense of everything that's behind me. If I were to use a standard 2.8 lens on 4x5, it would be like, what part of what eyelash do you want in relatively shallow focus? The only way to replicate that large format look or that medium format look, if you read all the listicle kind of blog posts and clickbait videos, they'll always recommend the Brenzier method, where you take multiple photographs like wide open with a long lens, and then you stitch them together in software like Photoshop. So shallow depth of field is easily nailed, but you also have very specific control over the planes using your movements on your large format camera. So not technically the lenses, but large format's going to give that to you very, very effortlessly. So the ability to get a really, really sharp picture with a low f-stop, that is something that large format can do that you can only do with very select, very expensive manual focus only lenses in 35mm. All right. Perfect. All right, Millinax Halide. What are my thoughts on alternative film for LF, like Arista Ortholitho or Harman Direct Positive? I love it. I did not always have access to adult money, and I definitely didn't know how to spend it responsibly for a long time. So I picked up shooting X-ray film very, very quickly, and I loved the look of X-ray film. I liked it more than working with paper negatives because it was a little bit faster, and I had access to stainless steel hangers and tanks, which allowed me to develop that film without getting tons and tons of scratches on that film. Whoa, I didn't even notice. We are over 100 folks on Large Format Live. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. If this is your first time here, my name is Matt Marrash. I run this whole channel all about large format. If you have questions about this crazy stuff or these big old cameras back here, let me know. I'm here to help you get a little bit more knowledge about it, or point you in the right direction. So I am all about using those alternative types of film. One of the cool things about large format, at least what drew me to it initially, was there were all of these options that weren't options in 35mm and medium format. I could just load crazy stuff. I could just take this camera and processor that was made for dental and veterinary x-rays and use it for my big camera. So there's a lot of limitations to large format, but there's also very, very few rules. Like you have to do the steps and everything, but you can throw whatever you want into the back of the camera. I guess my hot take on large format is I don't really care how you're doing it as long as you're engaging with these type of cameras. I don't think the film is going to make you the better photographer. I don't think the camera is going to make you the better photographer. I think just getting the larger thing that puts your head in a space where you're thinking about things like composition and placement, that's the whole goal. I don't even really care if you're taking a DIY large format camera and sticking a digital camera into it. That's fine. You're still going through a lot of the same, as I call it, dance to make a picture happen. So that's great. Go for it. All right. Victor asks, do I ever dodge and burn when making a contact print? That's a great question, and it's not like I asked anybody to ask that question, but that same print I have here, there's a ton of dodge and burn on this print. If I did what's called a straight print, so just no dodge and burn on there, that's what a straight print looks like of that glass plate, whole plate. It's not exciting. After a significant amount of dodging, however, we can get something that looks quite a bit better. Yes, those are, okay, they're slightly different exposures. This is like 5 minutes with the standard contrast, and this is 3 minutes with a good amount of dodge applied. Now, if you are going to dodge and burn with alternative photographic process, which is a UV-based process, we're not talking about moving our hands around for a few seconds. We're talking about blocking large chunks of this photograph for potentially minutes. Do not have open skin or open eyes when you're doing this sort of thing. You're going to want to have protection for your vision, so something that can block out those UV rays. So I literally wear sunglasses and gloves up to my elbow when I do this dodging and burning, and I usually don't use my hands. I'll just lay an object over top and like slowly move it around. So dodging and burning is very possible with alternative process, but you have to be careful with it. I don't want anybody getting hurt or accelerating skin cancer or any of that stuff. We're doing this because it's fun, not because it's dangerous. All right, but thanks for the question. All right, how are we doing here? Tyler, I'm going to play around with the flash here a little bit with the Lomo Graph Lock on my Cambo and Sekonic L508. So my biggest tip for working with instant film and flash, instant film is similar to slide film or E6 film in its response, meaning you have to be really bang on with your exposure. So if you are, well, if you're using instant film with flash, I try not to use super contrasty lighting. So try to keep those lighting ratios, the amount of one light source to another light source, try to keep that ratio, you know, not too crazy. So like 5:1 ratios aren't going to show up well. You're going to get white and black. But 1:1 ratios, so even amounts of lighting, or 1:2 ratios where you're an f-stop off, those are going to look pretty good on instant film. And some instant films do better than others. The Fujifilm Instax does a little bit better than the Polaroid Originals film, but you know, everybody's going to have their own, you know, their own kind of unique results. With the Lomo Graph Lock, you're working with Fuji, so it's not a worry. All right. Cool. Let's see. How are we doing? Oh wow, I am really behind on questions. I'm so sorry about that, guys. But thanks everybody for tuning in. We're still over 100 folks. This is wild. I don't know how much longer we're gonna go because you know I'm not like doing anything super active, but I'm gonna do my best to comb through as many questions as possible. How are we doing? Oh my goodness. Oh, this is a good question from Max. What piece of equipment do you regret buying or selling the most? I try to be, you know, no regrets when it comes to buying photographic gear, but there are a few large format purchases that I consider one-time purchases where like you buy the thing because you see other people talking about it and then you use it once and you're like, why the heck did I buy this thing? For me, that one piece was this the viewing filter, and I think I talked about this in one of my pieces of large format fluff, so the stuff you don't really need but they're fun. A viewing filter is nothing more than like a deep yellow filter, and you're supposed to flick it in front of your eye, and it compresses the range to similarly like what you would see with a monochrome film, like a black and white film. And the viewing filter, I thought it was neat. I saw, oh, it's like a cool frame, and I wear it on a lanyard like a necklace, and I do the thing. I used it like twice, and once I got used to the look of black and white film, and I was shooting a lot more of it, I would have rather just bought more film. Now at the time, the viewing filters were about $100 used, and $100 could get me quite a bit of 8x10 film. So yeah, I would have rather bought more film at the time than the viewing filter. Plus, you can like cut them out of like cheap like thinner filters and do the same thing. And now we have like digital cameras. So, you know, another kind of like hot take I have about film photography and photography in general is there's no cheating when it comes to photography. If to get your shot, you need to take out your digital camera and meter with that, or shoot a picture in auto mode and then translate those settings to your film camera, that's great. Don't worry about it. Don't let anybody talk you out of taking the picture. Have fun and do whatever is necessary to get the shot. As long as you're not hurting others or literally taking other people's work, you're not breaking any rules photographically. Just go out there and have fun. All right. How are we doing? All right. Hey, Matt, your thoughts on the will travel portable point and shoot 4x5 setups? No idea if I've got any experience with them. I have never used the will travel 4x5, but it kind of reminds me of other like ready to go 4x5 kind of point and shoot series cameras. Probably the most recent one that I have tried is the one from my buddy Ethan Moses over at Cameradactyl. He sent me a copy of the Cameradactyl OG. This was 3 years ago now, back in 2019, and I got to shoot with that a little bit hands-on with a few other photographers that are local to Columbus, as well as I got to take it to California for the Film Photography Paideia hosted by the Darkroom. It was a lot of fun. that camera kind of re-taught me something that I had forgotten for a while, that limitations are okay. It's okay to have a camera that doesn't have all the bells and whistles. That's great. In fact, I kind of like it sometimes when there's so many limitations, like a pinhole camera. I can't do any movements on that. I literally just have to place the camera differently. That's okay. So also don't let it get you down when you see folks that have like the biggest, most expensive brand new thing that they have to wait 6 months for. Any old piece of wooden junk is gonna take a picture just as well. Your camera is it's just a box. All right, I'm gonna jump to the Tachihara since it's been a lot of looking at me for a while. I'm not gonna go too close up on this camera, but this thing has seen much, much, much better days. So my 8x10 camera, there you go. Her name is Madoka. The name has been etched into her over the years. She's got some battle scars. The only thing she does not have, there's even some chippies on the ground glass there from my amateur ground glass cutting job. This thing is beat up. There's some old default screws that have been replaced, spacers that aren't there, loose rack on the rack and pinion. All sorts of stuff is quote unquote wrong with the camera. But guess what? The bellows are light tight. There's nothing electronic on here to worry about. It's a great camera. So I am all about using tools that are inherently limiting. My very, very first large format camera, which was the Eastman Commercial B, a magnesium monster of a camera. Oh, I love that thing, and I miss it so, so much because it was just like there was less things to think about on the camera. Sure, it doesn't have as many movements as this, and it doesn't fold up as neat, but man, that camera could like survive a nuclear blast. It was just like there's nothing to it, and I like simple tools like that sometimes. All right, so back to the camera. Hey Nico, thanks for the recommendation on Graflex parts in Minnesota. They are, I always forget about those guys, and Graflex parts are getting harder and harder to find. So anybody that's a good resource for those, I'm all about sharing those. Great. Couch Potato Gaming, I love the username. Hey Walter, all right. I've loved LFF and it's helped me out tons with my photography. I've been working with my Mamiya press and 2x3 cut film holders. That's really cool. Mamiya press cameras are super versatile cameras that it seems like they are like a very cult camera. You either have one and love it and have all the accessories, or you've like never heard of it and you see it and you're like, ew, I don't want to deal with that. But they're pretty neat cameras. The Mamiya press are cool. I like the Kony Omega press cameras because they have like the pump action kind of thing for advancing the film. So they're neat cameras and they're really versatile. All right. He's also asking, what do I think about medium format cut film? Would I recommend just getting 4x5? It depends. So if you've got the budget for it, I would recommend going with 4x5 because you're going to have a wide range of options. You have access to all the different roll film format sizes, so 6x7, 6x8, 6x9, 6x12. Some cameras will even take 6x17. Just ask Devin in the chat. He'll talk you all up about that. But you have more options. You also have a lot of lenses, but you can also slowly grow a kit with a 2x3 setup. The only downside about 2x3 is if you want to do individual cut sheets, you're going to be hitting that wall of less films that are available off the bat. But if you shoot a ton of roll film and you just want as lightweight a setup as possible, a dedicated 2x3 camera is going to be way cheaper, and as long as it comes with all the accessories, you're good to go. We're still at over 100 folks. Thank you so much. This is so cool. All right, let's see. Roger, I'm guessing you're talking about the reciprocity of Fomapan. Yeah, it's bad. A lot of the very traditional style films, as you start to give them less and less exposure, usually when it's darker or you're using a really high F number, I guess teeny tiny little F number, that's going to cause reciprocity failure. And traditional style films, it just drops off a cliff. So 1 second becomes 2, 2 seconds becomes 5, 3 seconds becomes 8 or 10. It goes exponential, the amount that you have to give. I remember the first time I tried a really, really long exposure with large format, I still had no idea what I was doing. I think I took the camera to Niagara Falls and I was doing a night exposure. So Niagara Falls, night exposure, making sure cops didn't, you know, get me in trouble because I was on the side of the road photographing. And I think after reciprocity failure was accounted for, my exposure was like 45 minutes or something, even though the metered time for the film was, I think it was only like a 2 or 3 minute metered exposure. But I was there for the better part of an hour. And I distinctly remember, I started the exposure, I started checking social media, I think I had a beer, and then I finished the exposure and then started walking around for my next composition. So it took a long time to make that happen. All right. Oh, I'm losing comments. Where'd they go? All right. Faranji asks, says, hi from NYC. Hey, is there any particular reason you choose PyroCat HD over other Pyro developers? Is it likely to offer advantages over PMK or other new formulations like 510 or Max Pyro? I guess I'm a creature of habit, so once I get used to something after trying it and I get good results, the next thing I'll do is keep trying it and seeing if the results I'm getting are because I got lucky or because I'm actually learning something about it. So once you get to a point where you have maybe a stable of two or three different film emulsions that you like, start testing those out within that new developer. Don't just try one developer in one film and call it quits. Definitely like try around a little bit. But once you have something, test it. Test it out with all the other stuff that you know you already like. And if it works well, stick with it for a while. I did that maybe for too long. I've been using PyroCat HD for about a dozen years. I've only used one other type of PyroCat developer, and that's a less restrained version of the developer called Obsidian Aqua. That one was kind of fun to play around with. I eventually ended up going back to PyroCat HD because I find it's the right balance of developing times and pretty easy to control contrast. But if you're used to one type of Pyro over the other, they're going to offer very similar effects. Negatives that you're really flattening out that curve, so you're getting a more flat or digital response out of the film, and it'll make them really good for scanning, silver printing, and with a little bit more aggressive development, you can get that film to, or you can get your film with Pyro to make negatives that are dual purpose. So they'll be good for printing as well as like alternative process printing, which is the reason I chose PyroCat HD to start. Great. Hey, Michael, I see in the comments there, message redacted. Oh no, hopefully it's hopefully we ended up getting a question from you. This is from Ken. Hi Matt, great channel, thanks. Always a viewer on Friday. Any thoughts on Bush Pressman 2x3? I haven't used one. I've seen a lot of them come into the camera shop before. They're not, when a camera shop sees those, they kind of go, I don't know. 2x3s are just a lot harder to sell for used retailers, but they're solid cameras. The 2x3s usually have a scaled down design from the 4x5s or vice versa. Yeah, they're going to be solid. They're just not going to have as many sheet film, like sheet cut films ready to go. So if you're going to shoot roll film, go for it. All right. Soupzer asks, with 3D printing, do you have any recommendations for accessories that can be 3D printed? This is where I'm actually going to recommend checking out the One More Stop film photography group on Discord. I'm going to see if I can get a link into the chat. If not to the chat, I will link up with me, shoot me an email at largeformatquestions@gmail.com, and I'll get you a link for One More Stop. Within One More Stop, there's another 3D printing group for analog photography. Maybe Devin can drop a link to that in the chat. There is a 3D printing for film photography group where they talk about all of the different things that are 3D printed. They share kind of recipes and different instructions for making those. So I admittedly don't get too deep into 3D printing. All right. Oh, Michael comments, one problem with T-Max, at least in 4x5s, the film certainly, yes. So T-Max 100 is a favorite film of mine for shooting landscapes because I love how it handles really contrasty situations, and I love how well the film prints and scans. But, and this is, I think, only a thing in the much newer T-Max 100, it has in the film an extra UV blocking layer, and that UV blocking layer prevents you from creating alternative process prints with the film itself. So if you shoot 4x5 or larger T-Max 100 that's relatively new, those negatives are not going to be great for alternative process. You're going to have a longer exposure time under your UV light source for alternative process prints. But if you make digital negatives or you make internegatives, so you're copying that negative onto a different medium that can transfer it, you're good to go. Cool. All right. So I got some more questions in here. A Noctway, sorry if I butchered the name. What do I think of Intrepid 4x5 cameras? I think Intrepid 4x5s are at the right price point, and if you want to get a new, if you want to get a new large format camera and not spend a lot of money, their 4x5 is one that I do recommend to folks. The only thing I don't like is, do we need like a lot more of these in the world? And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but like, I've always found for any time I start looking for a camera, especially used, I'm going to find way more out there than I could ever possibly need. There's already enough large format cameras in existence that are still working for folks that want one. But if you absolutely must have a new camera, yeah, grab one. But I bet you can find a used one for about $100 US less than the new ones. All right. Sipser asked, where do I recommend buying lenses? And have I tried large format trichrome? So we'll start with lenses. Try to find a small camera shop for lenses. Now, this isn't going to be just a shameless plug for my current place of employment, which is, oh, I can't see it in here, maybe back here. So I'm wearing the apron from them right now, so that's Midwest Photo. Midwest Photo actually has a lot of good stuff. Now, Midwest Photo doesn't do a lot of international sales. They will sell to Canada because it's just across over the border, and all 50 US states, but any further shipment from there, it usually gets kind of dicey, and unfortunately, thanks to fraud attempts, that doesn't happen so much. But mom and pop camera shops are recommended for lenses. One that I've noticed a lot online for UK is Nick and Trick Photographic Services. They have a lot of good large format stuff. So try to find a smaller camera shop. Some of these larger operations for used equipment, like your KEH, eBay, stuff like that, it gets a little bit trickier. Sometimes like issues with the lenses may not be completely fleshed out because these companies are operating at like a larger scale, and well, eBay's a company, but it's individual sellers. I try not to do stuff on Marketplace or eBay if possible, because it's really hard to evaluate, especially if it's coming from someone that doesn't know what they're selling. And it's hard to evaluate things like, evaluate and trust things like the shutter, is there mold, all of that stuff. So, a trusted, smaller time reseller is a good option when possible. If at all possible, see it in person first. But from running the channel for a couple of years, I know that it's very, very hard to come by these larger camera stores that aren't the big box stores. So, be patient, but look for those smaller camera shops that have used gear. Oftentimes, whenever I sell something out of Midwest Photo, I've seen prices that could be, 10 to 20% lower than what the current market is on stuff. And that's just because these smaller shops don't have that, that big marketing power that a lot of these larger big box stores do. All right. Joseph Brunges asked, Hypergon. Not yet. Maybe, I don't know, but not yet. So the Goer's Hypergon is a crazy little marble of a large format lens. It was made from the early 1900s onward. It's the precursor to like the hologon lenses, and it's just a hyper wide angle lens. It's one of my little dream lenses. For no logical reason, it's one that I just want to have to shoot with it a few times. I'm sure it's actually too wide an angle of view, but I want one. So not yet, Joseph, but fingers crossed, maybe someday. All right. Very cool. All right, Devin got the message on 617, so thanks, man. All right. Let's see, questions. How we doing? Hosep has a question. Film processing for scanning versus darkroom print. Any difference in negative densities? So this is an interesting question because I haven't dug too deep into what what needs to happen differently in new films. And I say new films because in 2022, there are quite a few film stocks, namely most of the Kodak film stocks, which are now made specifically with scanning in mind. So their color stocks are made for scanning less than they are for printing, and the black and white stocks, I don't think any adjustment needs to be made for scanning a negative versus printing a negative. If you have an overly dense negative, so that's a negative where the highlights look a little bit more black, they look a little bit more blocked up, those can be really tricky for scanning. Some scanners will interpret that extra density in the highlights as noise, so it'll actually look grainy in the highlights, especially during preview scans or really high resolution scans. That's kind of unavoidable. For me, the scan is not usually the final output, so I don't mind it, but if I do need to make a big print from it, I will go to a more specialty scan like a drum scan, which is very, very pricey to do, and a lot of equipment that needs involved. So I think for black and white, there's no special treatment needed for silver printing or scanning. Some folks will say a little bit less development for scanning negatives, but I think doing that sacrifices any of the ability it would need for silver printing. But alternative process, that's a whole separate beast. For doing alternative process, you need thicker negatives. You need negatives that have more contrast, a really, really higher contrast index than you would for normal silver or scanning. Great, all right. Oh, Mike asked a really, really interesting question. What's the biggest print that I've made? So I've made 3 what I consider really, really, really big prints. The largest print I've made with an enlarger, so an actual projected large format print, I used to have access in college to an 8 by 10 inch DeVere enlarger. So that was the DeVere 5108. It had this awesome Ilford 500H head, and I was able to make some 30 by 40s, and I made one 40 by 50 enlargement. The final print was so big, I actually didn't have any trays that were wide enough, and I didn't have a sink that was large enough to accommodate that. I don't know, I don't have any up in here right now, but in the rafters of the darkroom here, I used to have them hanging up. It was so big I had to use these cement mixing trays to make everything happen. And by the way, whenever you're shopping for large format gear, try to look for things that don't involve photography but have a similar use. So if you go to buy a giant tray for a 30 by 40, those individual plastic trays can cost over $100 new. But for every one film photographer, there's thousands of construction workers that need to mix cement. You can go to your local like home improvement or hardware store and buy cement mixing trays. These will handle the same size print up to 30 by 40, but they're $5. Like way, way, way cheaper, because there's more people mixing cement than there are darkroom printing. Oh, and then inkjet-wise, the biggest print I've made on inkjet is 60 by 80, and then I have also had a commission for a print that was to be printed out even larger than 60 by 80. It was a black and white that was mosaiced together for an 80 by 100. It was awesome. Unfortunately, I can't show it because it was for a private, it's for a private owner, and it involves people that don't want their photo out everywhere. So I wish I could show it. It's an amazing mosaic print, and it's the biggest one I've delivered commercially to date. So it's kind of cool though. All right. Okay, yeah, Lauren chimed in with that size print. They're pretty awesome. Oh man, we still have folks here over an hour in. Thank you so much. I'm going to try to comb through a few more questions. Yeah, and we might end the live here in a little bit. Let's see, how are we doing? Let's see. Oh, you know what, Devin, you make a great point. Intrepid, yeah, I can kind of see that comparison between calling them like the fast fashion of the world, because yeah, they're definitely made to respond to this new demand that is the film photography market, but I really don't know what kind of length of time they're going to last. I do know some people on the One More Stop, the OMS server, that have had let's say less than fantastic experiences with their cameras and the 3D printed parts that are attached to those cameras, but that you know, you have to make something meet a price point, things quality-wise drop off. There's so many used cameras out there, though. Give those a home. All right. Christina, I see your question here. What developing tanks do you recommend for 5x7 and 8x10 negatives for use with a unicolor, uniroller base or similar? So for those, you can actually get print drums. I think for 5x7 and 8x10, you can get the Jobo, I believe it's 2500 series, like a 2550 if I remember right. And I might have one here. Let me stumble around real quick and see if I can find the thing. Nope, that's just the head of one. Oh, there's a big lens. I'm gonna grab that out. All right. Yeah, I found another big Cinar lens. That's kind of cool. Where's my Jobos? Oh, here it is. Which one's this? Whoops, sorry. Sorry for the loud bang. Hey, chat. So this is a Jobo multi-tank. This is a 2551. I think 2500 series is what you would be looking for. But there are 3D printed reels that are meant to fit in here, kind of like they spindle right in, and that will accommodate up to 8x10 inch film size. 20th Century Camera has some 3D printed reels. He also makes ones that will fit the smaller Patterson tanks. In fact, I think I even have a 5x7 reel over here. Let me see if I can grab it. All right. Yeah, here it is right here. So this is actually one of 20th Century Camera's 5x7 inch reels. So this one will accommodate, I think it's 4 sheets. Yeah, this will do 4 sheets in a Patterson 3-reel tank. So the medium size one that'll hold 2 rolls of 120. You can also do 4 sheets of 5x7 film. So that's pretty neat. But he also has larger ones that will accommodate more in the larger size tanks. Okay, how are we doing question-wise? Great. Awesome. Oh, Daniel recommends National Camera Exchange in Golden Valley, Minnesota. I think I've met some folks from National Camera Exchange at trade shows forever ago, but yes, that's a great recommend. Another smaller shop. Love it. All right. Oh, large format trichrome. I've never personally attempted it, but it is something that is on the list. I say the list. I have this giant Google document where every time something pops into my head like, could that be a topic? I jot it down, and then after that, I will go back through and I'll start to develop it out a little bit more. Not darkroom pun intended, but I'll look at the topic and say, okay, how can I apply it to something that's that people are either asking for, or package it in a way that isn't just boring. And you know, a live stream, it's acceptable to just be talking at the camera the whole time, but you know, video's got to be like quick and to the point and a little bit more engaging. So I have to usually develop it out. I'll usually write a script or a summary at very least, and yeah, kind of go from there. But for trichrome, I really want to attempt it in large format. If I do though, it's probably going to happen with a more inexpensive film like X-ray film, because let's face it, black and white film is not getting any cheaper. In fact, that Eastman film that was available on eBay might be a good candidate for that, because it's a very solid film and it can handle a lot of processing and layering, all of that sort of stuff. If nobody hasn't checked it out yet, Attic Darkroom has some fantastic stuff on working with trichrome. I'm not sure if there's large format, but there's a lot of 35 and medium format on that channel, and the vibe is pretty cool too. All right. So Jason asked, can I recommend a favorite place for large format shutter or bellows repair? I don't know about bellows repair because there's not many places that will do shutters that also do bellows, but the shop, Midwest Photo, they send a lot of stuff to, not Midwest Camera Repair, who do they send to? They send it to, oh my goodness, now I'm on the spot, I can't remember it. Oh, Pro Camera. So Pro Camera in Virginia does a fantastic job. They've gotten pretty popular because they had a kind of semi-viral video pickup and put a big spotlight on the work they do, but they do some fantastic CLA work for 35 medium format and select large format shutters. So again, that's Pro Camera in Virginia. Cool. All right. Mark has another shout out for Andrew Coleman, another large independent repair facility. So fantastic. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Bill Schwab is in the chat. Bill, how's it going? I saw the announcement for Photostock 2022. I am so hyped. I think I might actually be able to make it, and it's been forever since I have visited and seen and experienced Pure, Michigan. So for those of you that don't follow Bill's channel, go ahead and click Northlight Photographic Workshops handle and head over to the channel and subscribe. Bill Schwab is responsible for the Photostock conference, which is, oh my gosh, like almost 20 years old now. So it's been going on for a long time. Bill is a fantastic photographer, dates back to the days in like Detroit doing some press photography. Just really cool guy. And through Bill's conferences, I have met so many neat photographers, and I've gained so many like opportunities just from meeting really cool folks, sharing a beer, and exchanging prints. So thank you so much, Bill, for all the work that you do. All right, we've got Bull VW enjoying LFF. Oh, thanks. Listening while rolling a second coat of paint on our guest room. Oh, well, I'm glad I can help the paint dry. Very cool. South Central PA. Oh, all right. I will admit, whenever I'm in PA, it's nothing personal about Pennsylvania, but I'm always driving through, and that drive has never I have to struggle to make it through Pennsylvania, usually as quickly as possible. Side story, I have family from the East Coast. I was born in Connecticut, so I used to schlep back and forth a couple times a year to the East Coast, and through FPP, or the Film Photography Podcast, I also had a lot of back and forth. And that drive through Pennsylvania, oh my goodness, as soon as I hit there on I-80, it's like, oh, all right. I know 6 to 7 hours are just like, we're going through, we're getting there. All right. Michael, great recommendation on the Jobo drums. So Jobo does have specific drums for doing sheet films. They can be very expensive, but they are very worth it in terms of consistency. So the Jobo specific expert drums are the 3000 series, the 3005, and then I think there's the 3010. They also have the 3060, 3063. That's like, they can do up to ultra large format 20 by 24 inch film. Expensive drums, you're literally paying $500 plus US for a piece of plastic, and you need a specialty processor if you're not hand rolling it or just using a manual roller. All right, let's see. Victor, this is a really good question. I'm going to read this one off. Do you have any thoughts on toning a thin negative to build density? Not really. Taking a negative and trying to build it up is a lot of work. You can try to do creative things like creating a negative mask or an unsharp mask that sits in there for enlarging, but it's a lot of work. It kind of reminds me sometimes another Professor Jeff phrase, so the same guy that told me to get a frickin' tripod. Also, when I showed him a thinner negative and I asked him what I could do with it, and he said, don't try to polish a turd. So yeah, basically that negative, if it is too thin, you may have a hard time. This also reminds me of a project I did a few years ago where I was trying to output everything with a platinum palladium finished print. My pie in the sky dream was to make prints all from negatives, all having the film borders just being perfect. And quickly into the project, I realized one of my film holders had a light leak, so some of the corners had like a little bright spot in there, so they didn't look as clean. And then a few of my negatives, they were a little bit messed up. They were a little bit thin. They didn't have enough density to print well. And instead of trying to sit there and dodge and burn with very expensive chemicals, I sucked it up, and I had a friend of mine help me create digital negatives. Now, the digital negatives didn't print identical to the real negatives on there, but it did a great job for making prints. At the end of it, I was kicking myself because there was some slight inconsistencies, but they did fine. Overall, folks enjoyed the prints, and unless we're talking with other large format photographers, very few were able to notice which one was a digital negative, which one was a film negative. So kind of the differences there. All right, I'm gonna try to cut out here in 5-10 minutes or so, and we're gonna do a few more questions. So, Couch Potato Gaming asks, thoughts on ways to make bigger prints, just like 16 by 20, in a limited space where tray processing might not work. So you could also go for larger print drums because rotary takes up less space than a giant tray. In fact, I have a rotary drum for prints right over here. So this is a big, come on, there it is. So this is a big old unicolor drum. This is great for prints up to, I think this one does up to 30-inch prints. You just roll this throughout. Can't do sheet film in this unicolor drum because it's going to leak light and leak a ton of chemicals, but this is going to be fine for black and white prints or even like RA4 color prints that you're doing in a smaller space. Now it kind of sucks. You have to turn the lights out and take the thing out, but if there's a will, there's a way. So you can even use drums like this. I've even seen folks use just cut off pieces of larger PVC tubing to make it work. All right. So how are we doing? Let's make sure. Let's see. Oh, hey there, back. All right. Sean Moore for Bellows recommends Custom Bellows UK. They are one of the best. Their price is higher than buying a generic brand bellows on like an auction site, but they are worth it. The difference is very easily noticeable. All right. Cool. All right, let's see. The chat, don't forget to also, oh yes, Laura, always coming in great with the reminder. If you haven't, give the live stream a like. That's what shares it out and lets folks see the replay and stuff. But also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, most Fridays I try to be up here, or at least in front of you, talking about different topics in the world of large format photography. It's pretty crazy to imagine that almost weekly for 2 years I've been doing this, and we're not out of topics. In fact, the best thing about photography is if you let it, it doesn't stop. You always find other little things to do and to chime in about. So that's what I like about this. My whole MO is to get as many people into this stuff as possible. That's what keeps it going, and that's what gets people sharing really, really cool things. You can't gatekeep your way into a new generation of people doing the thing that you love. So yeah, share what you know. That's why I do this whole thing, and we have so many cool folks in the chat chiming in. All right. Very, very cool. Let's see. Do we have... all right. You know what? I think I found my final question of the day, and this is from Jean or Jean. Could you please give us some good advice about choosing a tripod and head? All right. Actually, I'm going to see if I can switch to my other battery because the battery on this one died. No. All right. Let's go out of here. Where's the battery? There it is. So I have an older video from season 1 of LFF about tripod shopping, but it is getting kind of long in the tooth. I'm probably going to have to reshoot something like that because a lot of people do ask about this. But when it comes to tripods, you know, the tripod I'm using here, this is an old Enduro. Oh, I can't. There it is. So the tripod here, sorry if I don't want to give anybody vertigo with this, it is kind of looking downward. This is an Enduro CT414. That's an older model. Their newest one is a CLT series carbon fiber. But basically, whatever you're trying to hold up, in this case, this 15 pounds plus up to 5 pounds of lenses, you need to make sure your head holds preferably twice the max weight that you're going to put on it, and that the sticks hold not just twice this weight, but twice everything above it. So the sticks have to be, the legs of the tripod have to be the heaviest capacity, and then the head is usually another limiting factor. This has to hold at least double what's going on top of it. Why do I say double? Well, let me show you. If I start pushing these bellows out further, my center of gravity is now shifting. The weight of the camera is now shifting forward. If I shift the camera's bellows backwards and I bring this rear standard forwards, I now have a center of gravity on my camera, which is no longer sitting right over the center. Now, I have a nice little quick release here that allows me to loosen this and shift, and now it's actually a lot more secure right here than it was before. The plate underneath here, this is called a NovaFlex Q base. It allows me to put an Arca Swiss style plate on the bottom of my camera. That's what that blue plate is. And the other cool thing about it, I can just drop it down like this. That click means that it's not going to fall off, but it means I can slide my camera front to back to recenter it. If I had a head that could barely handle just the camera, as soon as the camera shifts too far forward or too far back, it'll fall. Now this, I don't recommend this for field work. I just did it because I'm cheap and I didn't want to pay $1,800 for a tripod head. This is an old Majestic. This was about, I think I got this for like 58 bucks at an estate sale, and it's been great, but it's really heavy. Just this bit of wrought iron here weighs about 6 or 7 pounds. The tripod itself weighs another 6 pounds, so that's 12 pounds before you even add the camera. And that's a carbon fiber tripod. So try to do twice the max weight you plan on putting on top of the tripod for the head, and then have a capacity that'll hold double all of this in the legs. And with that, I think I'm going to close out. I think I'm going to close out the old live stream. I want to thank everybody so much for stopping by today and just hang out, have a chill time. A lot of familiar faces and names popping up in the chat. I really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who chimed in with the super chats, who donated to the channel. Again, if you haven't checked out other ways that you can support the channel, you can head to marrash.com/, what is that? I think it's marrash.com/donate if you wanted to donate to the channel, or if you wanted to become an LFF sustaining member, you can go to marrash.com/memberships and check out all that stuff. Oh, you know what? Actually, I did want to announce one thing. I forgot. There is another cool thing that I just put live on the website, and folks have been asking me as the weather is getting nicer, am I planning on doing any sort of workshops? There aren't any that are on the books yet, but I did start opening things up for folks that wanted to do a little bit more of like a one-on-one type consulting. So not here in front of chat or anything on a live stream, but if you wanted to spend an hour up here in the darkroom printing, or if you wanted to do an hour virtually, you can head to marrash.com/one-on-one. And that is a great way that you can book those. Everything is all handled through there. You get to see my schedule before I even see it, and you can book those ahead of time, as far as 2 months in advance. So you can check that out. So anybody worldwide, not just the 34% of viewers who are in the United States, worldwide we can connect either via Zoom or Google Spaces, any of that stuff. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate everybody for sticking around for so long. Fantastic questions, as always. Go out there, enjoy the sunlight if you have some to go out and make pictures. If you don't, the winter time is also a great time to take stock of things, get printing, sorting stuff. Gosh knows I have to still label so many negatives that were made here on LFF. So thanks again, and yeah, get subscribed, and we'll catch you next time for more Large Format Friday.